What kind of manager tells a single mom to stop giving customers free smiles and hurry up with the ketchup? Darren Hensley leaned back in his truck, parked at the far end of the mall's back lot. Through his windshield, he could see the lights of the food court flickering on as the early crew filtered in. He rubbed his jaw, still not used to the gray in his beard. He'd owned this mall for 7 years, ever since buying it out from a failing real estate group. 13 food spots, 5 retail stores, 2 service kiosks. Profitable on paper. But lately, something felt off. It started with a message slipped into the company's general inbox, an anonymous note from an employee complaining about a toxic manager, a lack of breaks, and morale so low, even the rats gave up and left. The real gut punch came at the end. We care more about customers than the people who run this place do. Darren didn't show up with cameras or a team. He didn't even tell his assistant. He just threw on a faded hoodie, shaved his beard into stubble, and walked into the mall 2 days ago like any other guy looking for a paycheck. He applied at one of the busiest food court diners' grill stop and got hired on the spot as a dishwasher. No one recognized him, not the district manager who only saw emails, not the store manager who'd started after Darren bought the mall, and definitely not the staff. Corporate never visited these places in person. That was about to change. "Yo, new guy," called a voice from the back kitchen. "You gonna stand there or help unload the delivery truck?" Darren snapped out of his thoughts and jogged over. The manager, a tall guy named Vince, tossed him a crate of frozen patties with a grunt. "Let's go. You drop it, you're cleaning it up." "Got it," Darren said, gripping the crate. Vince was all bark, no smile, the type who timed bathroom breaks and bragged about it. Inside, everything moved fast. Grease popped, orders shouted, trays slammed. Darren kept his head down and listened. That's when he noticed her. A waitress, maybe mid-20s, dirty blonde hair pulled into a loose braid. Her name tag read Penny S. She moved like she'd been born in this place, dodging fry baskets, pouring sodas while calming a crying toddler, offering ketchup before anyone asked. She smiled at everyone, even when she was clearly exhausted. "Hey, Penny," Vince barked. "We're out of straws. Again, you forget to restock last night." "No, we were short all shift." "Then figure it out. I don't want excuses." She didn't argue. She just gave a tight nod and headed to the supply closet. Darren watched her drop off a tray at table 5, then slide into the back to grab straws. A man in his 50s sat at that table, hunched over, wearing layers and clutching a worn backpack. He looked like he hadn't had a hot meal in days. "Sir," Penny returned with a straw and gently set it down beside his cup. "You okay?" The man gave a weak nod but didn't touch the burger. Penny frowned. She knelt beside him and whispered something Darren couldn't hear. Then she walked to the register, pulled out her own wallet, and handed a bill to the cashier. "Hey," said the cashier, confused. "What's this for?" "His meal," she said. "Don't charge him, I'll cover it." Darren blinked. Vince saw it too and stormed over. What the hell was that? "He looked hungry," Penny said. "He didn't ask for anything, he just sat down." "I figured." "You figured wrong. You don't pay for food out of your pocket, you ask me." "Got it." "With respect, I didn't want to ask you." Vince's jaw tightened. "You can't just." "I already did. Take it out of my check if it's a problem." It was quiet for a beat. Then Vince spat. "You've got one warning. That's it." Penny walked away, shoulders stiff, but didn't look back. Darren swallowed hard. He'd seen enough today to make his blood boil, but he wasn't ready to reveal himself yet. Not until he knew how deep this went. Later that night, after closing, Darren stayed behind to wipe down trays. Penny was stacking cups when she glanced over. "You're new," she said softly. "You holding up okay?" He nodded, trying to keep up. "You will, just ignore Vince. He's all bark." Darren smiled faintly. "You didn't have to do what you did today." She shrugged. He was hungry, we've all been there. He hesitated. You got kids. One, my son's 6, loves dinosaurs and pancakes. Work doubles so he can have both. Darren felt his chest tighten. She offered a tired smile. Anyway, welcome to Grill Stop. That night, Darren didn't sleep. He sat in his truck, staring at the diner's lights, thinking about a waitress who bought a meal for a stranger, unaware the man next to her owned the entire mall and had watched her every action. Darren showed up the next morning before dawn, still wearing the name tag Vince had handed him with a grunt the day before. The hallway lights in the back corridor buzzed as he pushed through the service entrance. The fryer oil still smelled like yesterday's rush. He clocked in quietly and joined the prep line, slicing tomatoes next to a teenager who hadn't said more than 2 words since Darren arrived on shift. The kid had a stitched name patch. Lewis. He moved carefully, pausing now and then to rub his wrist. Darren glanced down and noticed a faint purple bruise just above the cuff of his sleeve. You all right? Darren asked, keeping his tone low. Lewis nodded once without looking up. Just tired. From yesterday. From all of it. He didn't offer anything else, and Darren didn't press. He finished slicing and moved to the back where the dish bins were already filling up. A few minutes later, Penny arrived, hair tucked under a black cap, her son's dinosaur keychain dangling from her bag. She gave him a nod as she passed, heading straight for the POS system to start the morning register count. Vince showed up right after opening. His voice echoed before he even hit the kitchen. Why's the back sink full already? Who was on closing last night? No one answered. Lewis hunched lower. Darren stepped in. Trash was full, dishes piled up during last call. Vince narrowed his eyes. You didn't finish. Did what I could. There wasn't time to get to everything. You make time, that's part of the job. Darren didn't reply, and Vince didn't wait for one. He turned and started barking orders to the grill. The morning rush hit hard. A school nearby had a half day, which meant a sudden wave of hungry teens. Penny managed the register alone while juggling 2 booths of customer complaints about missing sauces and cold fries. Darren caught her wiping a table with one hand while taking an order with the other. Lewis was on fries, but he kept flinching when shifting the baskets. When Darren slid over to help, the kid dropped the tongs and backed away. I'll take this station, Darren said to no one in particular. Vince stalked over. What are you doing? Kid's not feeling great. Better I handle the fryer. Vince leaned in. We don't babysit here. He can take a break after the lunch rush if he's still standing. Darren didn't respond. Penny glanced over just as Lewis slipped into the back hallway. She moved to intercept Vince before he followed. If he burns his hand again, it's a reportable injury, she said. We're already down 2. We can't afford another. Then maybe he should learn how not to burn himself. That was enough for Darren. He pulled off his gloves and walked to the dish sink. He needed a moment. Not because he was overwhelmed, but because every minute he stayed undercover, he saw more cracks in the foundation. Not just in Vince's behavior, but in how fear dictated the pace of the entire place. He waited until lunch died down before stepping outside to dump garbage into the alley bin. Penny was already out there, sitting on an overturned crate, sipping from a thermos. You all right? Darren asked, dropping the bag. She nodded, just needed air. My son's teacher called, he's got a fever. I asked if I could leave early, but Vince said I'd need to find coverage. Anyone available? She gave a dry laugh. Coverage? There's no one left to ask. We're already 2 down from last week, and the district won't approve extra hours. Darren sat beside her. That kid, Lewis, he okay? He's new, quiet, doesn't talk about much, but I've seen him icing his hand more than once. I don't think he ever got proper training. Vince threw him on the line 2 days in. Darren shook his head. That's dangerous. Yeah, Penny said, it is. Before they could head back in, Vince appeared at the door. You two done? We've got a line again. Penny stood. I need to leave at 2. My son's sick. Vince crossed his arms. Not my problem. You want to leave, find someone to cover your tables. I already told you. Then the answer's no. Darren stood too. I can take her tables. You're not trained on POS. Then train me. Vince stared at him. You're a dishwasher. I'm someone who can help. There was a pause. Vince's jaw worked, like he was about to say something worse, but then he turned and walked back inside. Penny watched him go. You didn't have to jump in. I've got nothing to prove to him. She looked at him, curious now. You don't talk like a guy who needs this job. I don't need it, but I need to see it. The afternoon dragged. Darren took orders, wiped tables, and ran food while Penny packed up and slipped out with a grateful nod. The moment she left, Vince's irritation turned tangible. He started pushing everyone harder, calling out minor mistakes, cutting short breaks, and reminding the floor that this isn't a daycare. Darren caught a glimpse of Lewis in the back, huddled behind the dry stock shelf, cradling his wrist again. He walked over slowly. Still hurting? Lewis nodded. Did you tell him? Lewis shook his head. He said if I couldn't handle it, I shouldn't have taken the job. Darren crouched. You need to get that checked. Don't wait until it's bad. Lewis bit his lip. My mom says we can't afford another bill. Darren didn't say anything for a moment. Then he stood and walked straight to Vince. Kid's hurt. He's fine. No, he's not. He can't grip anything, and you've got him working around hot oil. Vince leaned in. Back off. You're here to scrub plates, not manage staff. Darren dropped his apron. Not anymore. Vince rolled his eyes. Then clock out and don't come back. Darren held his stare. You sure about that? Positive. Darren didn't walk away. Instead, he turned toward the rest of the team, most of whom had gone quiet. The cashier froze mid-swipe. A cook shut off the grill. All right, Darren said. Let's make this simple. He pulled out his wallet and took out a card. One with the mall's ownership listed under Hensley Properties. He laid it on the counter. My name is Darren Hensley. I own this mall, every square foot of it. The room went silent. The only sound was the drip of the soda machine behind the counter. Vince blinked. What? I came here to see how this food court was being run. I've seen enough. Lewis stood in the doorway, eyes wide. The cashier whispered, You're the owner. Darren nodded. And I just watched a manager ignore multiple safety issues, berate staff, and refuse to let a parent go home to care for her sick child. Vince scoffed. You think you can just walk in here and throw me out? I don't think, Darren said. I know. He turned to the cashier. Call our regional HR rep. Tell her to send someone down immediately. Vince is done here. Vince laughed, short and bitter. You'll regret this. I regret waiting this long to find out what was happening in my own building. Vince stormed out, muttering under his breath. No one stopped him. Darren looked around. Everyone take a breath, we'll finish the shift. No one is getting fired today, except him. Lewis slumped against the wall, relief washing over his face. The cashier finally exhaled. One of the line cooks nodded once and went back to prepping patties. Darren stepped outside for air. The sun was low now, casting long shadows across the lot. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Get me the HR files for Grill Stop, and find out why the district manager hasn't visited in over a year. There was a pause. You okay? His assistant asked. Darren looked back at the food court, at the kid with the bruised wrist, at the waitress who worked doubles so her son could have pancakes. "No," he said, "but I'm about to make it right." Darren arrived at the mall an hour before opening and parked in the delivery lane behind the food court. The early morning humidity clung to the concrete, and the air smelled faintly of stale fryer oil. He didn't bother with a disguise today. He walked through the back corridor wearing a dark button-down and jeans, greeting the janitor on the way in. Inside Grill Stop, the kitchen lights were already on. Louis was at the prep counter peeling onions, his wrist now wrapped in a bandage. He looked up as Darren entered, paused, and gave a cautious nod. Darren handed him a bottle of cold water. "You sleep all right?" Louis nodded, "Better than usual." "Good, you'll be on register today. I've already cleared it." Louis opened his mouth, hesitated, then asked, "Why?" "You've been thrown into the fire without a map. Let's fix that." The kid looked stunned but didn't argue. Darren turned toward the break room, where the regional HR rep, Marla, was setting up at the folding table they used for staff meetings. She had driven in from 2 hours away, clipboard already full. He leaned in. "You have everything." Marla nodded. "Incident reports, employee files, security logs. The district manager's absence is noted. No visits logged in over 15 months. We'll deal with that later. Focus on the team here first." Marla glanced around. "Where's the store lead?" "Gone. I'll be stepping in until we find someone qualified." By the time the mall opened, the crew was half a person short. Penny hadn't arrived. Darren kept checking the front entrance, expecting to see her stride in with her usual quiet focus, but minutes stretched into an hour. No call. He pulled Louis aside. "You have her number." Louis hesitated again. "She told me once. Her son's school is 2 bus transfers and a walk away. If he's sick, she probably couldn't find anyone to help." Darren grabbed his phone and called the number Marla had pulled from payroll. Straight to voicemail. He stepped outside, scanning the parking lot. Nothing. He returned inside, grabbed his keys, and looked at Louis. "You're in charge until I'm back. Stick to what you know. Let Marla help with anything else." Louis swallowed but nodded. Darren drove down 2 exits to the neighborhood Penny had listed on her application. He found the street, a narrow lane lined with aging apartment buildings. He parked near a faded complex and buzzed the number listed under her unit. No answer. He was about to leave when a voice called from behind a rusted gate. "You looking for someone?" An older woman in a green housecoat stood on the stoop of the neighboring building. "Penny Sloan," Darren said. "She works at Grill Stop. I'm her employer." The woman frowned. "She left for urgent care. Her boy had a fever all night and started throwing up this morning. She doesn't drive, took the bus." Darren nodded. "Thank you." He turned and headed back to his truck, calling his assistant. "Get a delivery over to the urgent care on Maple and 54th. Something simple. Soup, juice, for 2. He returned to the mall just before the lunch wave. The counter was manned by Louis and a line cook named Erica, who had stepped up without being asked. Marla was helping bag orders. "You look surprised," Erica said as Darren stepped behind the counter. "Only a little. I've been saying for months, half this crew could run the place better than anyone they send from corporate. Today, you proved it." They worked through the rush with minimal issues. Orders were accurate, the line moved, no one yelled. The difference was immediate. After 2, Darren stepped into the break room where Marla was reviewing notes. She glanced up. "We've had 7 employees come forward so far. Complaints of unpaid overtime, denied shift requests, and threats of termination if they spoke up. Most of it points to Vince, but there's more." She handed him a folder. Grill Stop Corporate has a bonus structure tied to labor cost. Vince was manipulating clock-ins, shaving time off the books, and denying breaks to inflate his performance numbers. Darren's jaw tightened. Who signed off on it? District manager. Emails show they were aware and encouraged it. Then they're both out. I want a new district lead and a hiring freeze lifted. Back pay anyone shorted. Marla nodded, understood. Also, Darren said, get me a list of anyone who's been here longer than a year and never promoted. I'm fixing that too. Later that afternoon, Penny finally called. Her voice was hoarse. I'm sorry I didn't call earlier. I didn't know who to reach. They never gave us a real number. My son's okay now, just exhausted. You don't have to apologize. I know what happened. A silence. I didn't mean to leave everyone short. You didn't. You've carried this place more than anyone had the right to ask. You've got the rest of the week off, paid. Another pause. I've never had that before. You do now. Also, when you're back, we'll talk about moving you into a lead position. I'm not, she trailed off. You sure? I saw everything I needed to. He hung up and leaned against the wall, listening to the muffled sounds of the food court, plates clinking, orders being called, laughter even. At closing, he gathered the team in the small corridor behind the kitchen. They stood shoulder to shoulder, unsure of what was coming next. Darren looked at them, no speech, no press, just the truth. This job shouldn't hurt you. It shouldn't make you feel small. If it has, I'm sorry. That ends now. Erica asked, what happens next? We rebuild together. Lewis asked, what about him, the guy who ran this place into the ground? Gone, so is the person who let him. The team didn't cheer, they didn't clap, but they stood a little straighter. As they filed out, Darren stayed behind, wiping the last of the counters. Marla paused beside him. You didn't have to get involved this deep. Darren didn't look up. If I hadn't, I'd still think everything was fine. She lowered her voice. Most owners don't notice, or they don't want to. I saw a woman give her last $10 to feed someone she didn't know. That's who was holding this place together. Not the systems, not the policies. People like her. He looked up at the quiet restaurant. If we don't take care of them, we lose everything worth building. Darren arrived just after sunrise 2 days later. The mall was still locked, but the lights inside Grill Stop glowed through the metal shutter. He unlocked the service door and stepped into the back corridor, where the scent of bleach and thawing dough hung in the air. Erica was already prepping, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, moving between the fridge and the prep table with measured focus. You always this early? Darren asked as he stepped in. She didn't flinch. Not always. Just didn't want Lewis doing everything himself. He's already covering 2 positions. He nodded, watching her work for a moment. You ever considered managing? She wiped her hands on a towel. I've managed without the title for a while now. Darren opened the office door and stepped inside. A monitor blinked to life on the desk, displaying the live feed of the food court. Across the screen, the early cleaning crew pushed their carts, polishing tables. He checked the schedule pinned to the wall beside him. Still too short. He'd approved new hires, but background checks and onboarding took time. He walked back out just as Lewis arrived, still favoring his wrist, but moving with more confidence than before. You good for register again? Darren asked. Yes, got the hang of it now. Take your time. If it gets too much, flag Erica. Lewis gave a nod and slipped on his headset. The day moved slowly but steadily. Penny returned just before noon, her apron folded under her arm and her eyes still tired from sleepless nights. She walked in quietly, but when Lewis saw her, he pointed toward the office. He said to meet him in there. She hesitated, then nodded and crossed to the door. Darren looked up as she entered. How's your boy? Still sick but better. My neighbor's with him today. He gestured to the chair across from him. I meant what I said. I want you in a lead role. She sat, hands folded in her lap. I've never managed anything. You've already been doing it. You just weren't given the credit. I've stopped people from quitting, calmed down angry customers, ran shifts when no one showed, but I've never done paperwork or schedules. I'll teach you what you haven't learned. You already have the part no one can train. She hesitated, so this is permanent, not just a fill-in. Permanent with a raise, benefits, paid sick time. Her eyes flicked up. We didn't have that before. I know, that's changing too. She didn't smile, just let out a breath like she'd been holding it for weeks. Okay. Start tomorrow. Today you work the floor like usual. We'll keep things steady. She nodded and stood. Before she left, she turned back. You didn't have to come here, let alone stay. I needed to see who was doing the real work. That afternoon, while Penny ran the floor and Erica oversaw the kitchen, Darren reviewed the final reports from HR. Alongside Vince's termination, 2 other assistant managers from separate mall tenants were under investigation for similar mistreatment, both brought to light after word spread about Darren's undercover visit. It had started something. People were speaking up. He stepped out to the food court and sat at a table near Grill Stop's counter. For the first time in weeks, the pace inside wasn't frantic. Orders moved smoothly. Staff communicated clearly without fear lacing their voices. Penny handed off a tray to a regular customer, whose toddler clapped when she brought over a small container of fruit. Darren watched for several minutes, unnoticed. Then he stood and walked toward the back hallway. On his way, he passed the district manager from corporate, the one who hadn't set foot in the mall in over a year, waiting near the office door, adjusting his tie nervously. Darren didn't slow. You're here to collect your final check. Marla will bring it out. The man started to protest, but Darren cut him off without raising his voice. I don't need an explanation. Your silence cost good people their health. There's no coming back from that. Inside the office, Marla handed over the envelope and walked the man to the exit. Darren returned to the kitchen, where the new hire, a college student named Aisha, was learning how to portion sides. Erica stood beside her, offering short, clear instructions. No rushing, no pressure. You got her? Darren asked. Erica nodded. She's sharper than she looks, just needs time. Aisha looked up. I can handle it, I just don't want to mess up. Darren gave a small nod. Messing up's part of learning, take your time. Later, after the dinner rush died down, Darren watched as Penny gathered the team near the front counter. She wasn't loud, but she had their attention. We've got a new schedule starting next week. If you need changes, tell me before Friday. I'll work with you, not around you. Darren stayed in the back listening. She didn't need him to step in. She was leading already. As the team cleaned up, he stepped outside for a breath of air. The mall was quiet now, the sun having dropped behind the west wing. A car pulled into the lot and parked near the entrance. A man stepped out, the same one Penny had helped days earlier. His clothes were cleaner now, trimmed beard, a plastic bag in hand. He walked in slowly and approached the counter. Penny noticed him first and came around. I didn't get to thank you, the man said. That day, I hadn't eaten since Sunday. I didn't ask, but you saw I needed help. She smiled gently. You're welcome, you doing all right now? Got into a shelter, they helped me clean up. I start work next week. Where? Maintenance, here actually, in the mall. Darren, still leaning near the hallway, stepped forward. We approved that placement yesterday. The man's eyes widened as he recognized him. You're the owner. Darren nodded. Glad you're back on your feet. He offered the bag to Penny. I didn't have much, but I picked up a few toys at the thrift store for your son. She took the bag carefully, her eyes softening. Thank you, he'll love this. The man nodded once and walked off, shoulders straighter than when he'd entered. As Penny turned back inside, Darren stepped beside her. You changed someone's life. I just gave him a meal. Sometimes that's the start of everything. Closing went faster than expected. The team had fallen into rhythm. Lewis counted the drawer without needing help. Erica made sure the walk-in was sealed tight. Aisha stayed late to practice. Before Darren left, he walked to Penny, who was locking the front shutter. You'll need a new manager's badge tomorrow, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Does this one come with a key to the office? He smiled faintly, and a say in how this place runs. She looked around at the quiet storefront. It already feels different. Because you made it different. As he walked toward the exit, he passed the janitor, now whistling as he scrubbed the floor. The lights above flickered once, then steadied. Outside, the air was cooler. Darren paused by his truck, glancing back at the mall, its sign glowing in the dusk. He wasn't just leaving a place that worked better. He was leaving a place that finally cared. And this time, he'd be watching not from the shadows, but from beside the people who carried it every day.